Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
So we'll discuss about law of variable proportions today. Right. So yesterday we were discussing about production decision, and today we'll try to understand a bit more about how a firm is taking the production decision in the short run. Okay, so law of variable proportion is related to short run, as I was telling you yesterday. Now, first, let us revise that when we talk about short run, so what it means. You are saying that every economic decision has a time frame, or time is always important when we are talking about decision. So we do not have infinite time. Each decision maker does not has an infinite time. Time is also finite. Okay. Now this finite time is defined as either short run or long run. So when you say short run, as I told you yesterday, when we are talking about a month, or when we are talking about weeks, we are talking about short run. Okay, when the year is, when the time frame is less than 1 year. So short run is defined as a time period when at least one factor is fixed, or at least, pay attention to this, at least one factor is variable. Okay, on the contrary, when you say long run is a time period when all the factors are variable. All factors. Now, what are these factors? All factors of production are variable. Variable means they can change. So producer can change the use of factors, and if it can change the use of all factors of production, labor, land, capital, entrepreneur, raw materials, equipments, all can be changed at the same time, then you say it is long run. But when you are saying it is a short run time period, it means that producer has to take the decision considering that at least one factor is fixed. So suppose you are talking about a production decision where at least one factor is fixed, and the appropriate example will be land. Whatever activity you do, for the time period, land is always fixed. You have a given size of, say, shop, or you have a given size of factory, or you have a given size of uh, a premise where you want to produce something. So immediately you cannot change the size of land. So land is a fixed factor always. Or in some cases, suppose you are an airline company. So for an airline company, that Airbus or aeroplane which the firm is using to produce the output or to produce services, that remains fixed for a long time, right? So every day you cannot change, every day you cannot buy a new plane, or every day you cannot buy heavy machines. So in that case, when at least one factor is fixed, or at least one factor is variable, Like suppose you are talking about generation of electricity, and in generation of electricity, all the factors which you are using, they are difficult to change very frequently because they are bulky in nature, they are costly also, or their availability is limited. So in that way, in case of electricity generation, only factor which is variable can be labor. Labor can be varied easily. So fixed factor is generally land and capital, and variable factor is labor or raw materials to some extent, you can say, right? So when you say labor, most of the time, labor, when we are talking about labor, we will assume that all labor is homogeneous. Whenever we are talking about labor, so it means everyone, whosoever you are using for the production process. So every labor is not uniform. But what is our idea when we are say, suppose you are talking about uh, Reliance Industries. So in Reliance Industries, lot many people are employed, lot many people are working, and they are at different level. Someone is a manager, someone is an executive manager, someone is a regional manager, someone is the CEO, someone is the COO, someone, few people are working in the factories, few people are working as guards there, security guards there. So there are different categories of labor when we talk about labor: skilled labor, unskilled labor, manual labor, non-manual labor. So here you should understand that if we take labor as a homogeneous factor, then it is convenient for us to assume that labor is always variable. But if you are thinking about skilled labor, then skilled labor also becomes fixed in a short run time period. You cannot immediately change. Like suppose you are talking about doctors. So doctors are also part of the labor force, but their supply remains fixed in the short time period, because you take at least 5 years or 7 years to produce a doctor. So in that sense, you should always remember that when we are talking about labor as a variable factor, we are assuming that all labor is homogeneous. So this term is important. Okay, homogeneous. All are same in capacity, size, skill, training, attitude, everything. So when you are saying everyone is same, like suppose we say that BA1 section Z class is a homogeneous class. So homogeneous class means all students are same, they are all equal in the sense that they all are either scientists or they are from commerce stream. So they are all same, they are all in one place, they all take everything as same, they have same preferences, they have same income level. So everything is same, right, in terms of their capacity. So all are uh, first division holders or all are third division holders. So labor is homogeneous in our assumption, but generally it is not. And then raw materials. Raw materials most of the time is variable, but we will never include raw materials. We will never talk about raw materials as such. So for us, for our analysis, the important variable will be labor or capital. So we will be talking about these two factors only. We are not talking about land. We are not talking about raw material. We can, but we are not. So now short run is a time period where at least one factor is fixed or at least one factor is variable. Okay. And I hope you don't have any question here. If you have, keep on writing to me. Okay. Manual labor. Who is asking manual labor? So manual labor means all those who are doing work from their hand. Okay, they are not working most of the time through machines, or they use very less machines and they have to do work with their hand. Like suppose you see that construction activities goes on, and there are lot many workers on the site which who have to uh, who have to carry items or materials from one place to other. Some people are digging mud, or some people are trying to resurface the land, or those type of activities. Like in agriculture, most of your labor is the manual labor. Manual labor means they are doing work with their hands. They are not office workers. Like in the university, you see all the counters, these people are not manual labor, because they are working on the counter. They have stationery with which they are working. So in that sense you differentiate. Okay. Is there anything else which you want to understand? When output increases, then capitals is not increases. At least try to write proper English, Nivedita. What is this? Then capitals. Capital is always a plural word, okay? You don't put S there. Capitals is not increases. Capital does not increases. So capital is not increasing because that is our assumption. We are assuming that in the short run, there is only one factor which is variable, and rest of the factors are fixed. So if we are saying that we are using labor and capital, we are saying that with increase in production, we can only increase labor. We cannot increase capital. In some cases, suppose you are in Switzerland or Netherlands, so or you are in Japan, so maybe in those countries, if you have to increase the production, you will be increasing capital only, because labor is limited. So fixed factor depends on availability or supply. So generally we assume that labor is flexible, or labor supply is elastic. Labor supply is not fixed. So this is a term which you should try to understand here. Labor supply is elastic. So all those countries which have a large population, or which have a large pool of unemployed people, there the labor supply will be elastic. So when labor supply is elastic, labor becomes variable. And in those countries where population is less, or the growth of population is very low or negative, like in case of European countries and Japan, in that case labor supply becomes inelastic. Labor supply inelastic, because you cannot increase the labor as you wish, because they are limited in supply. So in a given time period, their supply is given. So whenever supply is given, it means inelastic. Whenever you can change the supply very easily, it means elastic. So suppose you are talking about you are talking about fish in the fish market. So you have n number of shops and you can purchase as many fish you want. So if you are in the fish market, then supply of fish is elastic. But suppose you are in a shopping mall where there is only one counter or small rack of fish where your frozen fish is being sold. So now in that case, frozen fish becomes inelastic in supply because once that rack is empty, you do not have extra fish with you. But in the fish market, you have all shops related to fish only. So in that case, your supply is either inelastic or elastic. So each and everything, each and every factor of production, each and every commodity can sometimes be elastic and can sometimes be inelastic. It is not fixed that once labor is assumed to be elastic or variable, it will always remain like that. It depends. Okay. So depending on time, depending on sometimes depending on weather, sometimes depending on situation, sometimes depending on economic environment, your supply keeps on changing. Okay, when you are talking about lockdown, so in case of lockdown, most of the things or the supply became inelastic because you can depend only up to the things which you have stocked already, which you have already stored. But when you are talking about a normal time, when movement is not restricted, everything becomes elastic. You want to purchase something, you can go to the market and purchase. So similarly for producer, suppose you are producing something in Andaman Nicobar Islands. I guess most of you are familiar with Andaman Nicobar Islands. So if you are producing something in Andaman Nicobar Island, for you all the factors will become fixed because everything which you belong to Allahabad and now you are starting your production in Andaman Nicobar. So you have to you have to transport all the production material to that place. So if you think next morning when you get up there, you think that you want to change your factors of production, it is not possible for you. So all the factors become fixed. So for you, short run is a time period when all the are fixed. There is no factor which is variable. Similarly, if you are producing in a rural setup, then there will be few things which are fixed and there will be few factors which is variable. So that in that way you should understand. So Piyush is saying that we can make labor elastic by increasing the price. Okay. Now remember one thing, when we are talking about these theories, our assumption is ceteris paribus. So if we are talking about, that is what I meant by short run. In the short run, you have many limitations. You cannot change everything. So price remains fixed. So you cannot change the price. Okay, here remember what we are talking about. We are talking about Q is a function of L and K. And in the short run, either L is fixed, and if L is not fixed, K is fixed. It is given. So our concern is only three: Q, L, and K. Nothing else comes to the picture here in the short run. So price is fixed. Price is given. You cannot change the price. If you can change the price, it is not short run. It is a long run situation, definitely. Okay. Later on, when we will consider the price, we will see that how the things takes place. But here, price is not changing. Okay. So assumptions are based on the idea of ceteris paribus. You have to remember this. So many of the things which will come to your mind, they are fixed, they are given, they are assumed to remain constant. I don't understand this question. How can any capital be fixed? I don't understand. You should understand what do you mean by capital. This is a very important term for you to understand, okay? When you say capital, capital means what? Capital has various meanings. Capital is money or cash. So maybe right now you have 100 rupees in your pocket, and that is the money which you are carrying. So it will not immediately change. Suppose someone asks you 500 immediately, how you will change that? Because you have only 100 rupees. So in that way, now this is a short run for you. Maybe if you can go back to your father, or if you can ask him, or if you can borrow someone from someone, and then you can give it to the person who is asking for 500. So you have whatever you have currently, that is fixed for you. You cannot change that. Okay. Now then you will say that, okay, I will use debit card or I will use credit card. But here our assumption is that whatever you have presently, that is only you are using. Debit card or credit card is not that capital which we are here talking about. Debit card cannot be used to produce anything. Okay. But money can. So here there are lot many assumptions which we are taking. But generally, capital is not money or cash. Okay. There are different terms which are there, which generally you use as synonyms. Okay. Without understanding that they are all different. Capital, finance, money. These are all different. They have different meanings. Okay. There is another term which you use, credit. So capital is different from credit, capital is different from finance, finance is different from credit. So when you say capital, it is actually fixed assets with production capacity. Anything can be termed as capital only if it has a production capacity. So money itself does not have a production capacity. Money cannot produce anything. Money has to be converted into machines or equipments or buildings. Then only it can produce something. So please understand that capital, as a factor of production, capital is a fixed asset which has a production capacity. Okay. So when we say that Western countries have more capital and countries like India is labor abundant, so try to understand the difference. Western countries or European countries have more fixed assets, larger fixed assets with huge production capacity, and you have a larger population. Therefore, labor force is more here. So availability of labor depends on population. So China and India have more labor as compared to capital. Okay. So capital is fixed asset with production capacity. Capital can also be taken as raw material. So capital can be money, capital can be raw material. Capital can be equipments, small equipments, large equipments, anything. Okay. Like for you, suppose you're talking about your pen. Maybe you are carrying your notebook and pen right now when we are doing the class. Or there are some students who just sit like that and they try to listen to the story. Okay. So all those students who are using notebook and pen right now during the class, they are using that as a capital. Why? Because those things which you write in your copy, they will last for long for you and you can use them anytime. So anything which can be used again and again for generating any output, that becomes asset having production capacity. Okay, you are talking about economic decision making, so try to be clear about some concepts. So equipments, now becomes an equipment for you. But a kid playing with pencil or pen or crayons, that is a consumable item. So anything can be a consumable item or anything can be used as equipments. Okay, for writers, pen is capital. But for you, pen and pencil is just another consumable item. For you, shoes is another consumable items. But for runners, shoes is not as you use the shoes. So you need to understand the difference. Okay. Similarly, buildings. Buildings are part of capital. Why buildings are part of buildings or factories? Why they are part of capital? Because they generate income. They have a production capacity. Like land has a production capacity, and many theories include land in capital. Land itself is a capital because for farmers, land is the capital. They don't use much money or they don't use much equipments, but land has a capacity to purchase, to produce. They can generate income out of land. So buildings, suppose you are talking about shops, you are talking about a piece of land on which you can build either a mall, either a school or hospital. So different uses, if any particular item, good or asset has multiple uses, has multiple production capacities, then it becomes capital. Okay. So if wheat, you have purchased wheat or wheat flour, it is a consumable item. But for a bakery or for a shop, it is a capital. Why? Because they can use it in many ways. They can sell it by, they can sell different products by using wheat, and that's how it becomes capital. So any factor which has a production capacity, any factor which can be used for future production, which is in form of fixed asset, which can be stored for a longer time, which does not have which does not have much consumption needs, that is, or which needs maintenance, then, and which wears and tears over the time period. This capacity, production capacity in the capital over the time period decays. Okay. So you must have heard one term, human capital. When you say capital, capital is machines, equipments, buildings. And at the same time, capital can also be in form of human capital. So you are not a human capital. If you are part of production, you are part of production as a labor, simple, all of you, right? But if you consider me, I am considered as a human capital for this production process in the economy. All those people who are trained, who are skilled, they are termed as human capital. So you are in the process of becoming human capital. You are still not part of the human resource of the economy. But education is trying to convert you into human capital. How you will become human capital from labor? The more you are skilled, the more you are trained, the more you are equipped with capacity to do your work efficiently, then you will be converted into human capital. Okay. So understand, this capital is not a simple term, but it means any asset which has a production capacity. And price of all these factors are assumed to be fixed in the short run, are assumed to be given and constant in the short run. Okay. And when you say equipments can be small and large, right? Equipment can be an aeroplane, equipment can be a photocopy machine, equipment can be a bicycle, equipment can be a transformer, equipment can be a mixer juicer. Anything can be considered as equipment. For you, mixer juicer is a consumable item. But for a person who is selling fruit juices, then for him, this mixer juicer becomes an equipment. It becomes a capital. Okay? Okay, so let us continue further. And now we have made clear that in the short run, at least one factor is variable or at least one factor is fixed. Now we'll try to understand this law of variable proportion. And first we are talking about a situation where production decision, when only one factor is variable, that is labor. So only variable factor is labor, rest of all the factors are fixed. You cannot change the machines, you cannot change the amount which you have invested in your production activity, you cannot change your land is also fixed, and you cannot hire a new CEO or you cannot hire a new factory premise. So everything else is fixed and only labor is given. And here you are only talking about that how this labor is used to producing output, nothing else. You are not talking about how labor is paid, you are not talking about what does this labor consumes. Okay, your only objective is to discuss this. Q is a function of L, that's it, nothing else. And remember, all labor is homogeneous. Price of labor is fixed and given. So producer does not have any control on price. All other factors are fixed. And one more important thing, price of output is exogenous and given. So this is out of discussion. Okay, price of output, the Q which you are producing, you are only talking about quantity of Q. So quantity of Q is a function of quantity of L. That is what you are trying to understand here. So how much quantity of L you will be using to produce a certain level of output, certain quantity of output. So your decision is regarding what? Producer has to decide about what? Producer has to decide about the quantity of L and quantity of Q. So how producer takes this decision? We'll try to see it through a table. And please draw this table in your copy so that you can look at the table later on, you can think about it, and maybe you will come up with some more questions. Production with one variable input. So C, amount of L, that is labor. Then you are talking about amount of capital because your Q is a function of L and K is given. And then you are talking about total output. So if you use a given quantity of L and K, what will be the total quantity of Q? Total output Q. So suppose you use the labor like this: 0 labor, 1 unit of labor. Amount of labor means units of labor. Like earlier you were consuming units of good, units of ice cream, units of apple. So here similarly units of labor: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you are using labor from 0 units to 10. How much capital you are using? You are using 10 units of capital. Capital is fixed. Okay. Fixed means it will remain same for all units of labor. So you are using 0 units of labor with 10 units of capital. So you are not using any labor, only capital. Fully mechanized production system. No labor required. 1 unit of labor and 10 units of capital. 2 units of labor, 10 units of capital. 3 units of labor, 10 units of capital. So capital remains the same. The units of capital remains the same. The amount of capital used remains the same. Labor varies. So labor is variable. So variable input is labor. Fixed input is capital. Now how does total output? When you are using no unit of labor, output becomes 0 because your production function says Q is a function of L. So if you will put 0 here in this bracket, Q obviously will be 0. When you are using the first unit of labor, suppose your total output is 10. When you are using the second unit of labor, the total output rises to 30. With third unit of labor, the total output rises to 60. Then with fourth unit of labor, the total output is 80. With fifth unit of labor, the total output becomes 95. With the sixth unit of labor, 108. Then with seventh unit, when you use the seventh unit of labor with the same 10 units of capital, the total output is 112. With the next unit of labor, the total output remains 112. Then if you use the ninth unit of labor, the total output is 108. And with the 10th unit of labor, the total output decreases to 100 only. Now this is your table, right? So next class when we will meet, give me some idea about this table. What are the major conclusions which you can derive from this table? Okay. Have you written this? Try to find out your own explanation with this table. How do you interpret this output? Try to find out some idea about this, how this is increasing: 0, 10, 30, 60, 80. Try to think about this and come up with some answers. Is equipment only consumable items? For a consumer, all equipments are consumable. Sagar? And for a producer, for a firm, no equipment is consumable. Okay, every equipment is used as a capital for a firm, for a producer, for a seller.
Okay, ma'am.
Because as consumer, you purchase everything from the seller or through the market. Like for you, vegetables are consumable, but for a vegetable vendor, vegetables are not consumables, right? They are the output for the vegetable vendor. Okay, so let us stop here and then we'll meet in the next class. Thank you.